Yeah, we have one that's actually connected to Loch Ness and the Loch Ness monster.
Oh my gosh, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
it was in August, I think, 1971, and young journalist Jan-Ove Sundberg was sent to Loch Ness by the magazine he was working for, Lektyr, which was a men's magazine, to write about the monster. And when he was, lurking around there, he go into the forest, and suddenly he sees this a UFO shaped like an iron, basically. They want to make clothes flat. I don't. You call it iron,
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah, and he sees three beings outside, in what he thinks looks like diving suits, which is interesting because diving suits is something that comes back into his in the mythology he was creating, basically. So these beings, they fly away in their iron UFO, and he goes home. He writes the article about the Loch Ness monster, doesn't mention the aliens or UFO or anything like that. But not long after, he starts to have uninvited visitors to his house in Motala. They were knocking on his door. They were calling him, threatening him not to write and talk about this. He saw a big black figure in the garden lurking around, and this scared him so much that he basically refused to talk about the UFO/alien part of the Loch Ness story. One need to keep in mind that Jan-Ove Sundberg was, if I'm going to be kind, you couldn't trust him always. He had a tendency to make things up, to just make it spicier. He claimed to have taken photos of this UFO in Loch Ness, and in Flying Saucer Review, he actually shows a photo of one of the aliens, which shows nothing at all. There's just a forest. There's nothing there. But it's fascinating, I think, because it was so connected to Loch Ness, which also brings forth another Men in Black episode in connection to that lake. The first interview, with Jan-Ove Sundberg was made by Ted Holiday in 1971 for Flying Saucer Review, or no, it was 73, and Ted Holiday is one of many things he's famous for is that he did a thing with a priest, Reverend Omand, I think his name was, who tried to exorcise the Loch Ness monster.
Nice.
The day after he did it, it's a bizarre story. He even exorcised the Bermuda Triangle, I heard, but I haven't looked into it so much.
Okay.
But the day after the exorcism, Ted Holiday was out walking nearby the lake and saw suddenly a man in black staring at him from a distance, dressed in black leather clothes, and he heard a whistling sound, and then he disappeared. So it's an odd little connection to the Men in Black mythos, even from that direction. The guy who wrote the article about Jan-Ove Sundberg's experience at Loch Ness. Jan-Ove later wrote a book called Phantom Submarines, or Fantomubåtarna, which it's a Swedish book where he goes into, we had a kind of a USO flap in Sweden during the 80s, where people saw strange, mysterious submarines everywhere. And Jan-Ove thought these were, of course, alien crafts of some kind. So in this book, he have a whole chapter on frogmen in black, which is, I never heard about it before until I read this book. And he have I think it's 25, 30 accounts of frogmen in black who threatens witnesses and behave weirdly, often in connection to strange, otherworldly submarines or whatever it is. So here the diving suits comes back again in his world, because the beings at Loch Ness had that. So Jan-Ove was a strange character, not totally pleasant, but he's someone in Swedish ufology. If a story is too good to be true, it's probably because you can find Jan-Ove somewhere in the background, spicing it up a little bit, or a lot, or totally. The man was a mystery, absolutely. He was a madman, but good writer. He kind of reminds me of Gray Barker in the way that he was. He had an amazing way of telling stories, and you were never really sure how much he made up. Gray Barker, of course, is a totally different class of, but they had similar properties, both these men. You know, there were tricksters, hoaxers, showmen, in one way or another, at least. But you know, the Frogman in Black is, you know, he had so many that I think he actually have some real accounts, and maybe he saw what he thought they would be in them. You know, maybe it was, you know, I mean, in the stuff he wrote, all these frogmen, what you can see of them, they have often a darker complexion in the skin. They have, you know, a bit exotic look. You know, in Sweden, everything was, you know, everything that didn't look Swedish looked strange at the time. There was one man, he was out walking with his collie, and he encountered like 6 or 7 of these frogmen coming walking towards him, and they kind of hypnotized him. So he was frozen, he was paralyzed while they were walking past him, which kind of reminds me of a couple of older gnome observations from Sweden, where the witness also kind of got paralyzed while they were marching by him. Another frogman, he wasn't dressed in a diving suit at the time, but he and his colleague was in an old-fashioned car, of course, stopped by the witness and asked for the direction to the harbor or something like that. And then he started asking questions like, what's your time cycle? You know, weird questions out of nowhere. Yeah. And of course, the witness later saw this guy and his colleague and a couple of other frogmen down by the water entering a submarine. These are weird stories, but like I said with Jan-Ove, you never know what's the truth in them. What have he added, and what have he totally made up, and what's the truth?